Hi, how's it going? This is Resident of Collinwood for YouTube, back with another Dark Shadows video for you guys and gals. I'm here to do my villain series, or at least start it. Gonna start with Mathew Morgan, played by at first actor George Mitchell and then played by Thera David. You know, when you first meet Mathew Morgan, he's walking down the steps. He's got that fire poker in his hand. He does not look happy at all. He doesn't. He's just the most sour looking dude you've ever seen. Well, unless you've seen Roger. Um, but all kidding aside, George Mitchell really laid a lot of the groundwork for what Thera David was going to go on to do. I think the character underwent a big change with Thera David. Not from a personality standpoint, no. I mean, from a look standpoint, sure. You know, you could tell two men didn't look the same. Come on now. Um, I really like both their performances are great. You know, George Mitchell, he could be both had this both had this way of being quiet one minute, then they could be loud the next second. They could be yelling at you or mean with you, and I think that just goes to show you what kind of range the Dark Shadows actors really had. They just had this great range of where they could be just calmly talking to you, then boom, they're yelling at you, and it's like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then they could grab you, and they'd be like, wait, why are you grabbing me? I just think both actors did a great job. Now, my biggest question that I had asked on Facebook and Twitter was, can you be so loyal to somebody that it causes you to commit murder? Can you be too loyal? And I do think that's the case of Mathew Morgan here. Can I definitively sit here and tell you Mathew Morgan murdered Bill Malloy? No, no, I can't. As much as I'd like to pin it on him and just say, yeah, he committed cold blooded murder, he didn't commit, I don't believe he did, but in the same sense, he did try to cover up a murder. And that's just as bad. Why did he try to cover up Bill Malloy's murder? In my opinion, and please do not be afraid to comment. What's your opinion on this? If you feel, yeah, he murdered him, cool. Now, with, do I, sorry, why do I feel he lied? Simple enough to keep it. Well, I do believe his answer to Liz. He didn't want them to say, "Oh, they found another body up at Collingwood." It's funny. Roger gives the same answer, and it's interesting. But I think the other reason would be because he wanted to keep his job. He did not want to go away from working for Liz and up at the Great House. I mean, that was, we've heard that Collinwood is the Collins family's property and it's their lifestyle, and it's Liz's, it's Elizabeth's life as well. It's the whole family's life. But sometimes you get people who aren't family members that Collinwood is their life, and that's Mathew Morgan. I mean, that's Mathew Morgan defined, really. When I take a look at the character's mental state, really, do I find him a tad crazy? Sure, sure I do. I do think there's something there about him. There's definitely something strange and something off for sure. And I think the biggest thing off about him is he's so loyal that he literally murdered, whether Liz told him to or not. Not that Elizabeth would tell him to murder. Now, keep in mind, Elizabeth does tell him to roll up a carpet with Paul's blood on it, and Mathew Morgan doesn't ask questions; he just does it. And it lets you know, if you weren't familiar with Mathew Morgan, that Mathew Morgan was one thing and one thing alone. He was loyal, and in every way he was loyal to his own fault, not to Liz's fault, not to Roger's fault, but to his own. And I mean, that's what ultimately causes the death of Bill Malloy, is loyalty. He felt Bill was stirring up trouble for Liz. What he couldn't understand is Bill was trying to help Liz, because no one wants to help Roger, really, um, unless David's wanting to help him into a hospital by removing the bleeder valve. But That's really good. So here's Matthew Morgan, and George Mitchell gives this sort of same sort of feeling. The one thing I love about Mitchell's performance that he doesn't get enough credit for, when Liz is wanting him to take the brake for the bleeder valve, not removing it, that he didn't properly check the car and the brakes. This looked like this gutted Matthew Morgan, but he did it anyway. He did it anyway for Liz, and I do think this hurt him in every way. I think this is the one, there's moments where, not just with, George Mitchell's, but obviously with Eric David's, where he's gutted, he's gut punched. He's really hurt by, here's this guy who has shown all this loyalty to Elizabeth. And here she's asking him to take the blame, to say, oh, he didn't check the brakes properly. He didn't, to admit to committing an error, really. And that's why the bleeder valve came out. And though he looks like a fool doing it, he does do it. When Liz doesn't take his side with Victoria, again, here's Liz. She doesn't want him to kill, she's not going to let him kill an innocent woman or kill somebody. Now, that's not Liz's thing. She's not a cold-blooded murderer. But here, when she doesn't take his side and he knows it, again, he's hurt. It's another thing of, though this guy is somewhat, psychotic a bit, he does have he's a human being. He has these feelings of, man, I have been loyal to this woman. I would bleed for this woman. Hell, I would kill for her. And hell, he almost did with Burke, and he did kill with her. Whether he kills, there's no question he kills Bill Malloy. Mathew, does does he do it to protect Elizabeth? Yes, in his own way. Again, just because somebody is, antagonistic or an antagonist, if you feel that way, it doesn't necessarily mean they're a liar or lying about something all the time. Yeah, Matthew Morgan does lie about things, and the things he lies about most is he lies about, the girls when they say they saw a body. He lies about that there wasn't, or that there was no body. But I believe he says there was seaweed, which is interesting. And then, Liz notices it. Liz calls him on it, and I love Joan Bennett for this. This is a great scene. And then, then that's when he tells her the truth. And she calls the cops instantly, immediately. And really, this is where you're first really introduced to Sheriff George Patterson. Keep in mind, by the time this happens, we've already had the bleeder valve incident. We've already had Constable Jonas Carter. Now we're getting Sheriff George Patterson, and we're getting Dana Elker. And this here, to me, once he admits to this begins, really, ultimately, it begins Matthew Morgan on a dark path. I think once he owns this, he knows. It's only a matter of time before they find out who really did this, and who they figure out who. And once Victoria says she saw the ghost of Bill Malloy, he figures the jig is up. Bill told her, and he's got to get rid of her, and he does everything to try to get rid of her. Why doesn't Matthew Morgan kill Victoria Winters at the old house? Simply because he's trying to get away from the cops. I do think Victoria's hostage taken is a way of him getting away, but him staying at the old house is a huge mistake. Is Matthew Morgan evil? I would say Matthew Morgan's misguided. I can't call him evil. I do think he commits bad intentions. But his bad intentions, one, is trying to harm Victoria. Two, accidental or not, him killing Bill Malloy. I mean, look, I can't sit here definitively and tell you guys I think Matthew Morgan murdered Bill Malloy in cold blood. I don't have enough evidence to suggest that. But at the same time, I have to, even though the character is a bit of an antagonist, well, becomes a bit of an antagonist or an antagonist, I can't say, well, he murdered Bill Malloy in cold blood. There's moments that Matthew Morgan tells the truth, and there's moments Matthew Morgan tells a lie. And you got to distinguish those two. I do believe him when he tells Liz that when he saw he saw Bill Malloy, he pushed it back and worked. Now, do I think he knows he killed Bill Malloy by that point? Sure, I do. Was it an accident? He says it was. Do I buy that? I don't know. I could see it being an accident, is what I'll say, but I could also see it being murder. Here's a man who was wanting to kidnap. Look, if it were Burke, it would be no accident. if 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 it were Matthew Morgan and Burke Devlin on top of Widow's Hill, then I would say Matthew killed Burke in cold blood, no question. Because look, he tried to kill Burke in cold blood in front of a lot of people in a blue whale. He tried to strangle him, but at the same time, I can't definitively say he killed Bill Malloy in cold blood. It may have just been an accident, sure. But when he decided to lie about it and cover up, and then the reason again he's doing it is two reasons. Number one, again, he's loyal, and I think that's the biggest thing. Here's a man who honestly, whether he would have done that or not, whether Matthew would have done in Bill Malloy or not, I think Matthew tells the same lie. That's what I'll give Matthew. That whether he done in Bill Malloy or not, if he would have actually found Bill Malloy's body and he honestly knew that he didn't do it, and he knows for a fact he didn't do it, I still believe he pushes that body back into that water. Simply because of what he said. He didn't want them to point a finger at Collingwood, basically at Liz, because he did care for her. He did. I do think I dare say he loved her. But I also think he wanted to keep his job too. Again, when you get into loyalty, this is what you have to ask with Matthew. Did Matthew's blind loyalty really cause all this? And I have to say, in many ways, yes, it did. His loyalty to Liz, his loyalty to that family really caused him to not become the person he is. I think he was always that person. He was always loyal to whoever helped him. But in the same sense, he did choose to lie about killing Bill Moore, or finding Bill's body. He did choose to lie about certain things, but he did tell the truth about certain things too. I think when I look at this character as a whole, is he a villain? He's not a villain right away, but he makes himself a villain by lying directly, and really by not telling the truth to begin with. Though he's not the strongest villain in Dark Shadow's history, nor will he ever be, he's one of the most interesting ones because his villainy isn't caused by money. It's not caused by greed necessarily. It's not even, really out of cold blood or amount or so much of a, it's not about revenge. It's more because he is loyal. This is really about loyalty to me, in my opinion. And this is also about he wants to keep his job. I've said Matthew Morgan wanted to work for Liz till the day he died. But the widows of Widow's Hill and Josette had other plans. They really did. I give George Mitchell and Thayer David a solid 10. They both did such a great job playing this character. I mean, I can't say enough about George Mitchell's performance. I love him and Victoria's interaction in Matthew Morgan's cottage. Keep in mind that is the first when they have that interaction. It is George Mitchell, and that is really cool. That's something that I think sometimes gets forgot about too. I know my wife actually forgot. She goes, doesn't she have that interaction with Thayer David? I said, no, she actually has it with George Mitchell, who's playing the character first. Because remember, George Mitchell's, again, to my wife, George Mitchell came first. She'll get a kick out of that. Really, really just great performance. Great, both great acting. I mean, just really good. And I'll say this too: the one thing when George Mitchell starts the grumpiness, the niciness, the back and forth, and there David just picks right up where George left off, really. And I think I can't wait to get into Willie because again, Hall and Carlin. Well, I'll get into that video because that's going to be a great video when I do it, and I assure you guys are going to enjoy that one most, I think. But this here, when I look at this character, his mindset, he's just that. He's loyal to a fault. And being loyal to somebody, blind loyalty and misguided really loyalty to not just Liz, but thinking that Liz would accept certain things is ultimately Matthew Morgan's undoing. Thinking, well, Liz will accept me killing, no. Killing an innocent woman is not on top of Liz's list. And killing an innocent person in general isn't on top of Liz's list either. What a character. Matthew Morgan is a great character played by two great actors, George Mitchell and Thayer David. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I will have another video up for you tomorrow night. I'm going to be dropping my story Wednesday. I'm really excited about that. Chapter 2. But I hope everybody has a great night, and I'll see you tomorrow night.